I'm Hayley, 29, a freelance graphic designer from Seattle. 3 days before my wedding, everything seemed perfect. The venue was booked, my dress was fitted, and my heart was full of excitement for our future together. Then my phone buzzed, a notification from Tyler, my fiancé. I expected a sweet photo of our wedding venue's final decorations. Instead, I saw him with my maid of honor, Megan. The caption beneath their smiling faces read, "We're getting married instead." My world stopped, but I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I simply typed, "Congrats." If you're watching this from a place where you've been betrayed, drop a comment below and let me know. Like and subscribe as I share what happened next in the worst week that became the best year of my life. I met Tyler 4 years ago at a networking event for small business owners in downtown Seattle. The venue was crowded with entrepreneurs, each of us hoping to make meaningful connections that might help our careers. Tyler stood out immediately, tall with warm brown eyes and an infectious laugh that made everyone around him feel at ease. He was an architect with his own small but growing firm, specializing in sustainable design for residential projects. Our first conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. We stood in a corner completely oblivious to the people around us, discussing everything from our business aspirations to our shared love of hiking the Pacific Northwest trails. By the end of the night, we had exchanged business cards, and I had butterflies in my stomach for the first time in years. Tyler called the next day, asking if I'd like to grab coffee to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. We both knew it wasn't really about business. That coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a weekend hike at Discovery Park, which eventually turned into the most meaningful relationship of my life. Our romance bloomed quickly, but naturally. Tyler was attentive, thoughtful and supportive of my freelance design work. He remembered little details about my preferences and would surprise me with small gifts. A particular type of pen I had mentioned liking, or bringing my favourite pastry from a bakery across town. For my birthday, 6 months after we started dating, he created a beautiful handmade card with a sketch of the skyline where we first met. We moved in together after a year, finding a cosy apartment in Capitol Hill with large windows, perfect for both his drafting table and my design workspace. Our life together felt like something out of a dream. We cooked together, planned weekend adventures, and supported each other through work challenges. Tyler became not just my partner, but my best friend. Then came the proposal just over a year ago. We had spent the day hiking up to Panorama Point on Mount Rainier. The weather was unusually clear, providing breathtaking views of the mountain and surrounding landscape. At the summit, while I was taking photos of the vista, Tyler dropped to one knee. He had carried up a small wooden box he had crafted himself, containing a vintage-inspired emerald ring that he knew I would prefer over a traditional diamond. "Hayley," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "you've made every view more beautiful, every day more meaningful, and every challenge more surmountable. Would you make every future day the same by becoming my wife?" Tears streaming down my face, I said yes without hesitation. Other hikers around us cheered and took photos which strangers later sent to us. Candid shots of one of the happiest moments of my life. The wedding planning began almost immediately. We set a date for the following summer, wanting an outdoor ceremony that would celebrate our love of nature. We found a beautiful venue on Whidbey Island, a restored barn with sprawling grounds overlooking the Puget Sound. The moment we toured it, we knew it was perfect. Of course, I asked Megan to be my maid of honor. Megan and I had been friends since our freshman year of college at University of Washington. We were randomly assigned as roommates and formed an instant bond that carried us through our 4 years of school and beyond. She was there for me during my parents' difficult divorce, and I supported her through a serious health scare in our junior year. Megan was the sister I never had, the friend who knew all my secrets and insecurities and loved me anyway. When I called to ask her to be my maid of honor, she squealed with delight and immediately started talking about planning my bachelorette party. In the months that followed, Megan was by my side for every major wedding decision. Dress shopping cake, tasting floral arrangements. She took her role seriously, maintaining a detailed spreadsheet of tasks and deadlines. We spent countless weekends together poring over bridal magazines and Pinterest boards. She came with me to 3 different bridal boutiques before we found the one, an elegant A-line gown with delicate lace detailing and a modest train. When I stepped out of the fitting room wearing it, Megan teared up and said, "Tyler is going to lose his mind when he sees you in this." Choosing bridesmaid dresses was just as special. Megan looked stunning in the sage green colour we selected, and she insisted on paying for her dress despite my offers to cover it as a thank you for all her help. "This is what best friends do," she said, hugging me tightly in the boutique. Looking back, there were subtle changes in both Tyler and Megan that I was too busy or perhaps too trusting to notice. Tyler began working later, claiming a new project was demanding more of his time. Our nightly dinners together became less frequent. He would sometimes take phone calls in another room, his voice dropping to a whisper. When I asked who was calling so late, he would say it was a client in a different time zone or a contractor with a question about specifications. Megan, too, became occasionally distant. She would cancel our regular coffee dates at the last minute, citing family obligations or work emergencies. But whenever we did get together, she was her usual enthusiastic self, eager to discuss wedding details and listen to my excited chatter about married life. I was so caught up in the whirlwind of wedding planning, selecting invitations, finalizing the menu, coordinating with vendors, that these small discrepancies barely registered. I trusted the 2 people closest to me implicitly. It never occurred to me that they might be betraying me in the worst possible way. The weekend before the incident, Tyler and I had dinner with both sets of our parents. Everyone got along wonderfully, and Tyler's mum pulled me aside to tell me how happy she was that I would soon be officially part of their family. "You've brought out the best in my son," she said, squeezing my hand affectionately. "We couldn't have wished for a better daughter-in-law." That night, Tyler held me close, as we fell asleep whispering that he couldn't wait to call me his wife. I fell asleep feeling secure, loved, and excited for our future. How quickly things can change. About 3 months before our wedding day, I started noticing subtle shifts in Tyler's behaviour. Nothing dramatic, just small changes that gave me occasional moments of pause. He began staying at the office later than usual, often not coming home until after I'd already eaten dinner alone. When I asked about his day, his answers became vague and brief, lacking the detailed stories about clients and colleagues he used to share. The frequency of his texts and calls during the day decreased too. Before, he would send me funny memes or quick messages like "thinking of you" throughout his workday. Those sweet check-ins gradually disappeared, replaced by sporadic functional communications about household matters or wedding logistics. When I mentioned these changes, Tyler blamed work stress. His firm had taken on a major commercial project, he explained, their first beyond residential designs. "The learning curve is steep," he said, rubbing his temples. "I just need to get through this busy period. Once the wedding is over and we're on our honeymoon, you'll have my undivided attention again." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Tyler had never given me reason to doubt his honesty before. Around the same time, Megan's reliability began to waver. Twice, she cancelled our scheduled dress fittings at the last minute, once claiming a family emergency, and another time saying she had food poisoning. When we did meet up, she seemed distracted, frequently checking her phone and smiling at messages. "Hot date," I teased once, nodding toward her phone. Megan's cheeks flushed. "Just work stuff," she replied quickly, tucking the phone into her purse. "You know how it is at the marketing agency, always some crisis to manage." One afternoon, while using Tyler's laptop to order thank you cards, mine was in the shop for repairs. A notification popped up on his screen. It was a text message from someone named M with just a heart emoji. The preview disappeared before I could see more. My stomach knotted, but I pushed the feeling away. M could be anyone. His mother, his cousin Mark, a client whose name started with M. When Tyler came home, I casually mentioned using his laptop and seeing the message. "Oh, that's just from a client," he said smoothly. "Madison Thompson. She's really excited about the design concepts we showed her yesterday." He kissed my forehead. "She's a bit over-enthusiastic with emojis in professional communication." I nodded and let it go. The explanation made sense, and I didn't want to be the kind of fiancé who suspected the worst without evidence. Weeks later came my bachelorette party. Megan had organised a weekend at a winery in Woodinville just outside Seattle. She'd arranged everything, the accommodations, activities, even matching robes for the bridal party. It was thoughtful and seemed to reflect our long friendship. But throughout the weekend, Megan kept disappearing to make phone calls. Several times I caught her texting rapidly, her expression serious. When she returned to the group, she would overcompensate with exaggerated enthusiasm, pouring more wine, and proposing increasingly wild toasts to my happiness. During a wine tasting, my college friend Jess whispered, "Is everything okay with Megan? She seems really on edge." I shrugged it off. "Probably just work stress. You know how she gets about her job." The night before we left, Megan gave me my wedding gift, an exquisite diamond necklace that must have cost her at least a month's salary. It seemed excessive, especially since I knew her position at the marketing agency wasn't particularly high-paying. "Megan, this is too much," I protested, holding the delicate pendant. "Nothing's too much for my best friend," she insisted, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "I want you to have something special to wear on your big day." Something about her generosity felt wrong, almost like compensation for something. But for what? Later that night, after the others had gone to bed, Megan and I stayed up talking like we used to in our college days. The conversation eventually turned to Tyler. "Are you nervous about getting married?" she asked, swirling the last of her wine. "Not about marrying Tyler," I answered honestly. "Sometimes I worry about the wedding itself. If everything will go as planned, if people will have a good time, but never about Tyler. He's the surest decision I've ever made." Megan's face tightened almost imperceptibly. She took a long sip of wine before responding. "That's good. He really loves you a lot." Something in her tone made me look at her more closely. "Is there something you want to tell me, Meg?" She shook her head quickly. No, just getting emotional about my best friend becoming a wife, that's all." She stood up suddenly, eager to end the conversation. "We should get some sleep. Early drive tomorrow." That night, I had a strange dream. I was walking down the aisle. But when I reached the altar, both Tyler and Megan were standing there holding hands. They looked at me with pity as the minister asked, "Why are you here?" I woke up with my heart pounding, feeling unsettled. I dismissed the dream as wedding jitters, a manifestation of normal pre-wedding stress. Everyone had told me some anxiety before such a big life change was normal. I convinced myself that's all it was, just nerves playing tricks on my subconscious. The morning after returning from the bachelorette weekend, Tyler brought me breakfast in bed. My favourite avocado toast with poached eggs. As we ate, he asked about the weekend, seeming genuinely interested in the details. His warmth and attentiveness pushed away my lingering unease. This was the Tyler I knew and loved. Megan did a great job planning everything, I told him, though she seemed a bit distracted at times. Really? Tyler's tone was casual, but I noticed him put down his coffee cup a little too carefully. How so? Just constantly on her phone taking calls. Probably work stuff. "Probably," he agreed quickly. "You know how dedicated she is to her job." For a moment, I thought I saw something flash across his face. guilt worry, but it was gone so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. After all, I thought, if there was something going on, wouldn't I know? Wouldn't I feel it in my bones? If the man I was about to marry, and my best friend since college, were hiding something from me. As the weeks passed, and our wedding drew closer, I pushed aside my occasional doubts and focused on the future I was certain awaited me. A loving marriage to Tyler, a continued close friendship with Megan, the life I had planned and dreamed of. How wrong I was. A month before our wedding, the nagging doubts I had been trying to ignore began multiplying. What had started as occasional whispers of concern grew into persistent questions I couldn't silence. It began when Tyler suggested changing our wedding photo location. We had already decided on a beautiful waterfront park for our pre-ceremony photos, but suddenly Tyler was advocating for a different spot, a botanical garden on the other side of the island. Megan mentioned it's really beautiful this time of year, he explained. She visited for a work event and thought it would be perfect for our photos. When did Megan tell you this? I asked, surprised they had been discussing our wedding details directly. Tyler hesitated before answering. She texted me about it. Since you've been so busy with work and wedding stuff, she thought it might be easier to run some ideas by me directly. It made sense logically, but something about it felt off. Why wouldn't Megan just tell me? She and I talked about wedding details all the time. Later that week, I noticed Tyler's phone lighting up with texts from Megan while he was in the shower. Nothing unusual about the notifications themselves. About that thing we discussed and, did you make the reservation? But why would Megan and Tyler need to make reservations together, and what thing were they discussing that I wasn't privy to? When I casually asked Tyler about it, he explained they were working on a surprise for me for the wedding. You weren't supposed to see those, he said, looking genuinely disappointed. Megan wanted to do something special for you, and she asked for my input. Again, the explanation was plausible. Megan organising a surprise wedding gift with input from Tyler made sense. So why did it still feel wrong? The following weekend, I met with my bridesmaids, except Megan, who had texted that morning saying she had a family brunch she couldn't miss. As we discussed final details for the wedding, my friend Alyssa mentioned seeing Megan at Le Coucou, an upscale French restaurant downtown. She was with some guy, Alyssa said casually. They looked pretty cozy. I waved, but she didn't see me. When was this? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Thursday night around 8. Thursday. The same night Megan had told me she was working late on a client presentation. A small lie, but why lie at all? Probably a work dinner, I suggested, though doubt had firmly taken root. Maybe, Alyssa agreed, but her tone suggested she thought otherwise. The guy was really handsome, dark hair, tall. They were holding hands across the table. The description could have fit dozens of men, but my mind immediately pictured Tyler. I dismissed the thought as ridiculous. Tyler had been home with me Thursday night. Hadn't he? I tried to remember, but the past few weeks had been so busy with wedding preparations that the days blurred together. After the bridesmaids left, I called Tyler, who said he was at the office catching up on work. Quick question, I said, trying to sound casual. Were you home with me Thursday night? There was a pause before he answered. Thursday. No, remember I had that client dinner with the Andersons. I told you about it last week. Why, had he told me, I couldn't recall, but there had been so many details to keep track of lately. Just trying to remember something, I said vaguely. When did you get home? Around 11, I think. You were already asleep. The conversation left me unsettled. Was I becoming paranoid? Was the stress of wedding planning making me suspicious of the two people I trusted most? But the incidents continued to accumulate. Tyler began talking about wanting more personal space after we were married. Not that I don't want to be with you, he quickly added when he saw my expression. Just that it's healthy for couples to maintain some independence. This from the man who had once said his favourite part of living together was that we were rarely apart. Then came the discovery of Megan's earring in Tyler's car. I found it wedged between the passenger seat and center console when I was looking for a dropped lipstick. "Oh, I gave Megan a ride to the stationery store last week," Tyler explained when I showed him the small pearl stud. "She must have lost it then." "You didn't mention giving her a ride," I said. Tyler shrugged. "Didn't seem important. She texted saying her car was in the shop, and I was heading that direction anyway." Another plausible explanation, yet another secret interaction I hadn't known about. One evening, Tyler came home, smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize, a floral, slightly musky scent that definitely wasn't mine. "Why do you smell like perfume?" I asked directly. Without missing a beat, Tyler replied, "I stopped at Nordstrom to look at cufflinks for the wedding. The saleswoman was very enthusiastic with her perfume. She practically bathed in it." I nodded, accepting the explanation, even as doubt gnawed at me. The next day, I decided to check Tyler's phone while he was in the shower, something I had never done before and felt guilty about even contemplating. But I needed to know if I was imagining things or if my instincts were trying to warn me. His text conversation with Megan was surprisingly sparse. Just a few mundane exchanges about wedding details. Too sparse, actually. There were gaps in the conversation that suggested deleted messages. Why would they need to delete innocent messages about wedding planning? When I tried to subtly question Megan about the wedding preparations, her responses became defensive. "Everything's under control, Hayley," she said with uncharacteristic curtness when I asked about the bachelorette party photos she'd promised to share. "Don't you trust me to handle it?" "Of course I trust you," I replied automatically. But did I? The Megan I knew would have been sending me daily updates and asking for my input on every detail. Later that week, I had lunch with my mother, who had flown in early to help with final wedding preparations. As we discussed the seating chart, she hesitated before asking, "Is everything okay between you and Tyler, honey?" "Of course," I said quickly. "Why would you ask that?" She studied my face before answering. "Just a feeling. He seemed distant when we had dinner last night, and I noticed how he lights up when he gets texts. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but what, Mum?" She sighed. "I don't want to put thoughts in your head before your wedding. It's probably nothing. Pre-wedding jitters affect the groom too, you know." I nodded, but her observation had hit a nerve. Tyler had been lighting up at text notifications recently, often turning his phone away slightly when reading them. That night, I lay awake long after Tyler had fallen asleep, his arm draped over me in the familiar way that had always made me feel secure. Now, I wondered if that arm had recently been around my best friend. Was I being crazy paranoid? Or was my intuition trying desperately to make me see what I didn't want to acknowledge? I told myself that if there really was something going on, someone would have seen them together and told me. Seattle might be a big city, but our social circles were interconnected. Surely someone would have noticed if my fiancé and maid of honor were having an affair, unless, of course, they had been very careful, unless the occasional late nights, the missed calls, the changed plans had all been orchestrated to create opportunities to be together. No, I decided firmly I was letting pre-wedding anxiety create monsters where none existed. Tyler loved me. Megan was my dearest friend. In 3 weeks, Tyler and I would be married, and these absurd suspicions would be forgotten. 3 weeks, just 3 more weeks, and I would be Mrs. Hayley Sullivan. Nothing would go wrong. Nothing could go wrong. How desperately I wanted to believe that. 3 days before what should have been the happiest day of my life, I woke up early buzzing with nervous energy and excitement. Despite my occasional concerns over the past few months, the reality of my upcoming wedding had pushed most doubts aside. I was marrying Tyler, the man I loved and trusted. Everything else was just pre-wedding jitters, I convinced myself. That morning I had a final checklist of details to handle. My mother had flown in from Chicago and was staying at my apartment to help with last-minute preparations. We sat at my kitchen island reviewing the seating chart one last time while drinking coffee. The florist confirmed the centerpieces will be delivered directly to the venue tomorrow afternoon. I told my mum, checking off another item on my list, and the cake delivery is scheduled for noon on the wedding day. You've thought of everything, sweetheart, Mum said, squeezing my hand. This wedding is going to be beautiful. Tyler had left early that morning, kissing me goodbye, while I was still half asleep. He had mentioned needing to meet with a client, but said he would drive to our venue on Whidbey Island afterward to check on the tent setup and lighting installation. I want to make sure everything's perfect for you, he'd whispered before leaving. I'll send you pictures once I'm there. Around noon, I tried calling Megan to confirm our final dress fitting scheduled for that afternoon. She didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. 10 minutes later, she texted back, "So sorry, Hayley can't make the fitting today. My aunt is in town unexpectedly, family emergency. Can we reschedule for tomorrow morning?" I frowned at the message. This was the third time Megan had rescheduled in the past 2 weeks. And what kind of family emergency involved an aunt unexpectedly in town? It didn't make sense, but I didn't have the energy to question it. I texted back a simple, "No problem," and called the boutique to change our appointment. My mother noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" Megan cancelled our fitting again. I sighed. "It's fine. We'll go tomorrow." Mum hesitated before speaking. "Honey, is Megan all right? She seemed a bit off lately." "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure exactly. At your shower last week, she barely spoke to you, and she kept checking her phone the whole time." I had noticed that too, but had attributed it to Megan's work stress. She was always juggling multiple projects at her marketing agency. "She's probably just busy," I said, trying to convince myself as much as my mother. At 2:17 p.m., I would later remember the time with painful clarity, my phone chimed with a notification. A message from Tyler. My heart lifted, expecting to see photos of our wedding venue, perhaps with questions about where certain decorations should be placed. Instead, what I saw changed everything. The image showed Tyler and Megan standing together at the entrance to our wedding venue. His arm was around her waist. She was leaning into him, both of them smiling broadly at the camera. They were standing beneath the floral arch that had been installed for our ceremony, the arch I was supposed to walk through to meet Tyler in 3 days. And the caption beneath the photo, "We're getting married instead. Sorry, but true love can't be denied." I stared at the phone, unable to process what I was seeing. My brain refused to accept it. This had to be a joke, a terrible, tasteless joke. Mum noticed my frozen expression. "Hayley, what is it?" I couldn't speak. I simply handed her the phone. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh, Hayley, no." The room seemed to tilt around me, my chest constricted so tightly I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, it felt like a physical blow. My fiancé and my best friend, together, planning to marry each other instead of me marrying Tyler. How long had it been going on? Weeks, months? Had they been laughing at me behind my back while I excitedly planned my wedding? Had they been together every time one of them cancelled plans with me? The questions swirled in my mind like a tornado threatening to pull me under. But beneath the shock and pain, something else was building. A cold, clear anger that steadied me. "Hayley, say something," Mum urged, her face pale with worry. "Should I call someone?" "Your father." "Ashley." Ashley was my younger sister who lived in Portland. I took a deep breath and found my voice. "No," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Don't call anyone yet." I took the phone back and looked at the message again. The evidence of their betrayal. The proof that the two people I trusted most in the world had been lying to my face for God knows how long. I felt a strange sense of clarity cut through the chaos of emotions. Without allowing myself to think too much, I typed a single word in response: "Congrats." Then I blocked both their numbers and turned off my phone. Mum stared at me in disbelief. That's it, congrats, honey. You should tell them both exactly what you think of them. I shook my head. They don't deserve my tears or my rage. They're not worth it. But even as I said the words, tears were streaming down my face. The pain was overwhelming, but I refused to let them see it. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they had broken me. What about the wedding, all the guests, the deposits? Mum asked, practical even in crisis. The wedding. Our guests were scheduled to arrive in 2 days. Some were already en route from across the country. We had spent thousands of dollars on deposits that were now non-refundable. Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. Tyler and I had merged our finances 6 months ago. We had joint bank accounts, shared credit cards. He had access to all our wedding funds. Money we had both saved for over a year. The accounts, I said suddenly. I need to protect our money before they try to use it for their wedding. Mum nodded understanding immediately. You're right. Let's call the bank right now. In that moment, through the haze of betrayal and heartbreak, I made a decision. Tyler and Megan had stolen my trust, my future, and my happiness. They would not steal a single penny more from me. As I picked up the phone to call the bank, a strange calm settled over me. This was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one. And in this story, I would not be the victim. I would be the one who rose from the ashes stronger than before. Little did I know then just how true that would prove to be. The initial shock gave way to purposeful action. With my mother by my side, I sat down at the kitchen table, dried my tears, and began formulating a plan. The practical tasks gave me something to focus on besides the searing pain in my chest. First, the money, I said, pulling out my laptop. We need to secure everything before they can touch it. I called our bank and explained the situation with as much composure as I could muster. The sympathetic customer service representative helped me immediately freeze our joint credit cards and flag them for potential fraudulent activity. Then I transferred my portion of our shared savings, money I had contributed for the wedding and our future, into a new account under only my name. Next, the wedding vendors, Mum said, already pulling up the list on her tablet. One by one, we called every vendor we had booked. The venue, caterer, photographer, florist, DJ, rental company. To each, I explained briefly that the wedding was cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. I requested they not accept any changes or instructions from either Tyler or Megan. Most were understanding, though the cancellation fees were substantial. Don't worry about the money now, Mum insisted when I winced at the mounting costs of cancellation. That's what wedding insurance is for, and your father and I will help with whatever isn't covered. While reviewing our credit card statements, I discovered something that made my blood boil. 2 weeks earlier, Tyler had used our joint card to purchase a diamond ring from Tiffany & Co. A $12,000 charge that could only have been an engagement ring for Megan. He had used our shared money meant for our life together to buy a ring for my best friend. That absolute bastard, Mum whispered when I showed her the statement. I had never heard my proper Midwestern mother use such language before. I called the credit card company again and disputed the charge, explaining that it was an unauthorized purchase made without my knowledge or consent. Given the circumstances and the fact that I had already reported potential fraud on the account, they agreed to investigate. By late afternoon, we had contacted most of the critical vendors and secured my finances. Next came the hardest part. Telling people what had happened. I decided to start with Tyler's family. They deserved to know what their son had done. With shaking hands, I dialed his parents' number. "Haley dear, how wonderful to hear from you," Tyler's mother answered cheerfully. "We were just discussing what to wear to the rehearsal dinner." My voice caught in my throat. These people had welcomed me into their family, had treated me with nothing but kindness. "Joyce!" I began using my future mother-in-law's first name, something she had insisted upon from our first meeting. "I'm calling with some difficult news." There was a pause. "What is it? Is Tyler all right?" "Tyler is fine," I assured her. "But the wedding is cancelled." "Cancelled? But why? What's happened?" I took a deep breath. He's been seeing someone else. My maid of honor, Megan. He just sent me a picture of them together at our venue. They're planning to get married instead. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came a gasp of horror. No, that can't be right. There must be some mistake." "I wish there was," I said softly. "But it's true. I've seen the evidence myself." "Oh my God. Hayley, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry, so sorry." Her voice broke. I could hear her calling to her husband in the background, the muffled conversation, as she told him what their son had done. When she returned to the phone, she was crying. "We had no idea, Hayley. Please believe me. We would never have condoned this. This isn't how we raised him." "I know," I assured her. "I don't blame you. We'll call him right now," she said firmly. "He'll hear exactly what we think of this behavior." After ending the call, I sat in exhausted silence. My phone began ringing almost immediately. Tyler's sister, Lindsay. Unlike her parents, Lindsay's reaction was less shock and more anger. "I always knew something was off with him lately," she fumed after I explained. "He's been acting strange for months, secretive, checking his phone constantly. I thought maybe he was planning a surprise for the wedding, but this... God, Hayley, I'm so sorry." "Did you ever see them together?" I asked. "Tyler and Megan?" Lindsay paused. "Not exactly, but last month I stopped by his office to have lunch, and he was just leaving with some woman. When he saw me, he looked startled and introduced her as a client, but their body language seemed intimate. I didn't get a good look at her face. Do you think it could have been Megan? Possibly," I said, my stomach turning at the thought of how long this deception might have been going on. "What can I do?" Lindsay asked. "Seriously, anything at all. Could you help contact some of the family members from Tyler's side? Let them know the wedding is off." "Absolutely," she agreed without hesitation. "Leave it to me, and Hayley, you deserve so much better than my brother. I hope you know that." After that call, my phone started blowing up with notifications. Tyler had apparently unblocked his number and was sending a barrage of messages. "Hayley, please let me explain. It's not what you think. I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry things turned out this way. We need to talk about the apartment and our things. This isn't entirely my fault. Megan and I just connected in a way I never expected. I got caught in a situation I didn't know how to handle." The last message made me laugh bitterly. Caught in a situation he didn't know how to handle. As if his affair with my maid of honor was something that had just happened to him, rather than a series of conscious choices to betray me. I didn't respond to any of his messages. Instead, I drafted a brief but dignified email to our wedding guests, explaining that the wedding had been cancelled and apologizing for any inconvenience. I didn't go into details. They would all hear the truth eventually through the grapevine, but I wouldn't be the one to spread it. My mother watched me with concern. "Maybe you should rest, honey. We can continue this tomorrow." But I shook my head. "No, I need to keep going. If I stop, I'll fall apart." By evening, we had notified all the vendors, both families, and most of the wedding party. I asked Mum to contact the remaining bridesmaids. I couldn't bear to talk about it anymore. The final task was the hardest. Tyler and I shared an apartment filled with our mingled possessions, shared furniture, and countless memories. The thought of sorting through it all was overwhelming, but I couldn't stand the idea of living surrounded by reminders of our relationship. "We'll start tomorrow," Mum decided firmly. "Tonight, you need to rest. We'll make a plan for the apartment in the morning." That night, I sat alone in my living room after Mum had gone to bed in the guest room. Our apartment was filled with wedding gifts that had arrived early, China sets, kitchen appliances, monogrammed towels with both our initials. On the mantel was a framed engagement photo of Tyler and me, smiling happily on Mount Rainier, where he had proposed. Flower arrangements sent by well-wishing relatives adorned every surface. In the quiet darkness, the reality of what had happened finally hit me full force. I curled up on the couch and sobbed, muffling the sound with a pillow so as not to wake my mother. I cried for the future I had lost, for the betrayal by the two people I had trusted most, for the humiliation of having to explain to everyone why my wedding was suddenly cancelled. But even in my deepest moment of despair, a small voice inside me whispered that this was not the end, that somehow, someday, I would look back on this as the moment that set me free from a man who didn't deserve me, and a friend who had never truly been one. Eventually, exhausted by emotion, I fell into a restless sleep on the couch, surrounded by the remnants of what should have been the beginning of my happily ever after. Little did I know then that my real happily ever after was still to come, just not in the form I had expected. The morning after discovering Tyler and Megan's betrayal, I woke up on the couch with swollen eyes and a determination to reclaim my life. My mother was already in the kitchen, making coffee and talking quietly on the phone to my father. "She's being so strong," I overheard her say, "but I'm worried about when it really sinks in." I cleared my throat as I entered the kitchen, and she quickly ended the call. "Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted, but ready to keep moving forward. After a fortifying cup of coffee, we tackled the apartment. I decided I would be the one to move out. The lease was primarily in Tyler's name, and the thought of fighting over it exhausted me. Besides, the apartment was now tainted with memories I wanted to escape. We started gathering all of Tyler's belongings, his clothes books, personal items, and packing them into boxes. I was neither gentle nor careful with his things, taking a grim satisfaction in tossing his expensive dress shirts haphazardly into containers. "What should we do with these?" Mum asked, holding up framed photos of Tyler and me. "Recycle bin," I said without hesitation. "The frames too." As we worked, my phone continued to buzz with messages from Tyler. I had unblocked him only to coordinate the practical aspects of our separation, but his texts veered between self-justification and pleading, "I never planned for this to happen." Megan and I tried to fight our feelings but couldn't. "Can we talk in person? I want to explain everything." "What are you doing with my things? Please don't involve my family in this. They're upset with me." I responded only to the practical questions about his belongings, ignoring everything else. I informed him that his things would be boxed and ready for pickup the next day, and that I expected to be gone from the apartment by the end of the week. Around noon, the doorbell rang. Mum answered it and returned looking uncomfortable. "It's a delivery for you." A massive bouquet of red roses sat on the entryway table, at least 3 dozen blooms. The card read, "I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. Please let me explain. Tyler." Without a word, I picked up the vase and walked straight to the trash chute in our hallway, dropping the entire arrangement down. The sound of shattering glass at the bottom was oddly satisfying. Throughout the day, friends began calling and texting as news of the cancelled wedding spread. Some had already heard rumours about Tyler and Megan. My phone became a constant stream of outraged support. "I can't believe they would do this to you. You're better off without both of them. What can I do to help? Want me to slash his tyres? Just say the word." My college roommate Zoe called from Boston. "I'm booking a flight right now," she said firmly. "I'll be there tomorrow to help." "You don't have to do that," I protested. "Yes, I do. That's what friends are for. Real friends, not backstabbing ones like Megan." By evening, we had packed most of Tyler's things and had started separating our shared items. The wedding gifts posed a particular challenge. Etiquette dictated they should be returned, but the thought of writing dozens of notes explaining the situation was overwhelming. Let's deal with that next week, Mum suggested. One step at a time. That night, I received an unexpected text from Megan, the first contact since her betrayal. Hayley, I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to. What I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know it wasn't planned. Tyler and I connected while working on your wedding surprise, and things just happened. I never meant to hurt you. The feelings we developed were real and overwhelming. I know that's no excuse. I just hope someday you might understand that sometimes love happens in ways we don't expect. I truly am sorry for the pain I've caused you. The audacity of her message left me speechless. She was actually trying to romanticize their betrayal, casting it as some grand, inevitable love story, rather than what it was. A deliberate series of deceptions by two people who were supposed to love me. I showed the message to my mother, who snorted in disgust. The nerve, she muttered, trying to make it sound like a romance novel instead of cheating. Should I respond? I asked. Mum thought for a moment. Only if it would make you feel better. But remember, you don't owe either of them anything. Not explanations, not forgiveness, not even acknowledgement. After careful consideration, I decided not to reply. Engaging with Megan would only give her the opportunity to further justify her actions, or worse, try to assuage her guilt. Her apology wasn't about making me feel better, it was about making herself feel better. I refused to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I focused on practical matters. I called a real estate agent and arranged to view apartments the following day. I contacted a lawyer to discuss how to legally disentangle my finances from Tyler's beyond what I had already done. I began making lists of items I would need for a new place. The activity kept me from dwelling too much on the pain, but in quiet moments, the magnitude of the betrayal would hit me anew. How could the man who had held me every night for years, who had promised to love me forever, do something so cruel? How could the woman who had been my confidant since college, who knew all my insecurities and dreams, steal the future I had planned? That night, looking at rental listings on my laptop, I came across an advertisement for Bali. "Find yourself in paradise," the tagline read, showing a serene beach at sunset. And suddenly, I had an idea. Tyler and I had booked our honeymoon in Bali, 2 weeks at a luxury resort on the island's southwest coast. The tickets were in my name, the reservation confirmed with my credit card. We had been scheduled to leave 3 days after the wedding. "Mum," I said slowly, "what would you think if I still went on the honeymoon?" She looked up from her book, surprised. "To Bali, by yourself." Yes. The idea took firmer shape as I spoke. The tickets are paid for, non-refundable. The resort is already booked. Why should I lose that too? A slow smile spread across her face. I think that sounds like exactly what you need. That night, as I lay in bed, trying to sleep, I made a decision. Tyler and Megan had stolen my wedding day, but they would not steal my future happiness. Starting with that honeymoon, I would reclaim my life and rebuild it, stronger, wiser, and on my own terms. The road to healing would be long, but for the first time since seeing that devastating selfie, I felt a spark of hope. This was not the end of my story. It was just the end of a chapter, and I would be the one to write what came next. A week after the day that should have been my wedding, I boarded a plane at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport alone, but determined. The airline staff, seeing my single ticket on what was clearly booked as a honeymoon package, gave me sympathetic smiles, but asked no questions. The decision to take the honeymoon trip solo had raised eyebrows among some friends and family. "Won't it just remind you of him?" my sister had asked with concern, but I was firm in my resolve. This trip would be about reclaiming something for myself, about refusing to let Tyler and Megan's betrayal take one more thing from me. The 14-hour flight gave me plenty of time to reflect. As the plane soared over the Pacific, I thought about the whirlwind of the past week. Tyler had come to collect his belongings while I was out apartment hunting, a cowardly choice that didn't surprise me. He had left a lengthy letter of explanation and apology that I had torn into tiny pieces without reading. I had found a small but charming furnished apartment in Fremont, a neighborhood north of downtown Seattle. The landlord, hearing my situation, had agreed to a month-to-month lease to start. "Take your time deciding if it's right for you," she had said kindly. Zoe had arrived as promised and helped me move the essentials to my new place. We had spent an evening with a bottle of wine sitting on cushions on the floor of my nearly empty new apartment as I alternated between tears and bursts of nervous laughter about the absurdity of my situation. "You know what I keep thinking," I had told Zoe, "that I dodged a bullet. Can you imagine if I had discovered their affair after the wedding or years later, maybe with kids involved?" Zoe had nodded. "Silver linings, I guess, though I'd still like to punch both of them in the face." Now, as I watched clouds drift below the airplane, I tried to focus on that silver lining. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had revealed the truth about two people I had wrongly trusted. Better to know now than later. When I arrived in Bali, exhausted but excited, the contrast between my planned honeymoon and this solo journey became immediately apparent. The airport greeter looked confused when only I emerged to meet him, glancing behind me for my missing spouse. The driver who took me to the resort made awkward conversation, carefully avoiding questions about why I was alone. At the resort check-in, the staff had been briefed about my situation, likely by the sympathetic travel agent who had helped me modify the reservation. "Welcome to Bali, Ms. Reynolds," the manager said warmly, with no mention of honeymoons or congratulations. "We have upgraded you to one of our premium ocean view suites complimentary, and there will be a special dinner prepared for you tonight if you wish." The suite was stunning. Expansive windows overlooking the Indian Ocean, a private plunge pool, and a terrace where I could watch the sunset. It was designed for romance with its king-sized canopy bed and double vanity bathroom, but I was determined to make it my sanctuary for healing instead. That first evening, I sat on the terrace with a glass of wine watching brilliant oranges and pinks paint the sky as the sun sank into the ocean. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed myself to fully feel the grief of what I had lost. Not just Tyler and Megan, but the future I had planned, the trust I had given so freely, the certainty I had felt about my path in life. I cried until no more tears would come and then sat in the gathering darkness listening to the waves. It felt like a necessary release, a purging of pain that left me empty, but somehow lighter. The next morning, rather than hiding in my room, I forced myself to venture out to the resort's beachfront restaurant for breakfast. Sitting alone at a table for one, I felt painfully conspicuous among the couples and families enjoying their vacations. "Is this seat taken?" a voice asked. I looked up to see a woman about my age, with curly hair and a friendly smile, gesturing to the chair across from me. "I'm Natalie," she said when I nodded. "I couldn't help but notice you're here alone too. Mind if I join you? Solo resort breakfasts can be a bit awkward." Natalie, I learned, was from Melbourne, travelling alone after a difficult breakup. She introduced me to two other women she had met at the resort. Diane from London, who was taking a sabbatical from her high-pressure banking job, and Kyoko from Tokyo, celebrating her recent PhD completion with a solo trip. "We formed a bit of a lone wolves pack," Natalie explained. "We were going to try a snorkeling excursion today. You should come." I hesitated only briefly before accepting. What was the alternative, sitting alone in my room, thinking about what might have been? That day marked the beginning of an unexpected transformation. With my new international friends, women who knew nothing of my history and asked for no explanations about why I was travelling alone, I began to experience Bali not as the honeymoon location I had lost, but as an adventure I was claiming for myself. We explored temples and rice terraces, took a cooking class in a local village, hiked to a hidden waterfall, and spent evenings sharing stories over dinner. They were all navigating transitions in their own lives, and in their company, I found a perspective I had been lacking. Life rarely goes according to plan, Diane told me one evening as we watched traditional Balinese dances, but sometimes the unexpected detours lead to better destinations than the ones we originally mapped out. Halfway through my stay, I joined a yoga and meditation retreat at the resort. The instructor, a serene Balinese woman named Wayan, spoke about letting go of attachments to outcomes and people who no longer served our highest good. Pain is inevitable in life, she said during one session, but suffering is optional. It comes from clinging to what we think should have been, rather than accepting what is. During a meditation session focused on forgiveness, I found myself thinking of Tyler and Megan, not with the sharp pain I had become accustomed to, but with a kind of detached pity. They had chosen deception over honesty, betrayal over integrity. Whatever relationship they built on such a foundation would be inherently flawed. For the first time, I considered the possibility that I might eventually be grateful for escaping a marriage to someone capable of such cruelty. Not now, the wound was still too fresh, but someday. As my 2-week stay neared its end, I realized I had not checked social media or my personal email once during the trip. I had been so immersed in the present experience that I had temporarily forgotten about the life waiting for me back in Seattle. On my last evening sitting with my new friends at a beachside restaurant, I raised a toast. To unexpected journeys, I said, and to the strength we never know we have until we need it. Natalie smiled. And to new beginnings. They're often disguised as painful endings. I returned to Seattle with a tan, hundreds of photos that contained no trace of romantic couple activities and a newfound sense of resilience. The apartment I had hastily rented now felt like an opportunity rather than a consolation prize, a blank canvas where I could create a space that was entirely my own, reflecting the person I was becoming rather than the couple we had been. My mother met me at the airport, studying my face carefully as I emerged from the terminal. "You look different," she said, hugging me tightly. "More at peace." "I feel different," I admitted. Not completely healed, but getting there. In the car, she updated me on what I had missed. Tyler and Megan had indeed gone through with a small wedding ceremony at a different venue. Several of our mutual friends had refused to attend in solidarity with me. Photos had circulated on social media which my friends had carefully shielded me from. "Do you want to see them?" Mum asked hesitantly. I considered the question seriously. No, I finally decided. Their lives aren't my concern anymore. That night in my new apartment, I unpacked souvenirs from Bali, not the couple's mementos I had envisioned bringing home, but meaningful reminders of my solo journey, a small carved wooden statue of Ganesha, the remover of obstacles that Wayan had given me, a bracelet handmade by a local artisan that my new friends had bought for me, a journal filled with thoughts and reflections from my trip. On the inside cover of the journal, I had written a quote Kyoko had shared with me. "Sometimes the universe's greatest gift is not giving you what you thought you wanted." As I placed these new treasures around my apartment, I realized I was not just decorating a space. I was beginning to rebuild a life, a different life than the one I had planned, certainly, but potentially a stronger, more authentic one than would have been possible with Tyler. The next morning, I woke early and did the yoga routine Wayan had taught me. As I moved through the poses on the small balcony of my new apartment, watching the sun rise over the Seattle skyline, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel so soon after such betrayal. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation or for a quick replacement relationship, but hope for myself, for the woman I was becoming through this crucible of pain and renewal. The road ahead would still have difficult moments. There would be mutual friends to navigate, awkward explanations to give, painful reminders to face. But standing there in the morning light, I knew with sudden clarity that I would be okay. More than okay. I would thrive. Tyler and Megan's betrayal had broken my heart, but had failed to break me. And for that realization alone, I was beginning to feel something unexpected: gratitude. A year after what should have been my wedding day, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, adjusting the collar of my blazer. The reflection that looked back at me was familiar yet changed. Same blue eyes and blonde hair, but there was a confidence in my posture and a calm resilience in my expression that hadn't been there before. "Ready for the big day?" my new roommate Aisha asked, popping her head into my room. I nodded, feeling genuinely excited rather than nervous. More than ready. Today was my first day as a design partner at Horizon Creative, a prestigious design firm that specialized in branding for sustainable businesses. What had begun as a freelance assignment, introduced to me by Kyoko, who had connections in Seattle's design community, had evolved into a full-time position and now a partnership. "They'd be crazy not to make you partner after that eco-resort campaign," Aisha said, handing me a travel mug of coffee. "You literally transformed their entire brand." The path to this moment had not been straightforward. After returning from Bali, I had thrown myself into freelance work partly as a distraction and partly out of financial necessity. The wedding cancellation had been costly, even with insurance covering some expenses. I had taken on whatever projects came my way, working long hours to build a new portfolio and client base. The opportunity with Horizon had come 3 months after my return, when Kyoko recommended me for a short-term project. I had poured everything into that assignment, channeling my pain into creativity. The client had been so impressed that they requested me specifically for their next project. And then another firm had heard about my work and reached out. What began as a way to stay afloat financially had evolved into a thriving career that surpassed what I had built before. My design work had taken on a new depth and authenticity that clients responded to. "There's something different about your work now," my new boss had commented. "It has soul." As I gathered my things to leave for the office, I glanced at the small vision board I had created and hung by my door. Not the wedding inspiration board that had once occupied this space, but images and words that represented the life I was building: professional success, genuine friendships, inner peace, adventure, growth. The months since Bali had been a gradual process of rebuilding. I had sold the apartment I had shared with Tyler and bought a charming 2-bedroom condo in a vibrant neighborhood closer to downtown. Aisha, a pediatric nurse I had met through a roommate, matching service, had moved in 3 months ago, bringing warmth and laughter into what had sometimes felt like an empty space. My social circle had shifted dramatically. Some mutual friends had disappeared from my life, unable to navigate the awkwardness of maintaining connections with both me and the couple who had betrayed me. Others had demonstrated unexpected loyalty, cutting ties with Tyler and Megan entirely, and new friendships had formed, with colleagues at Horizon, with Aisha and her circle of friends, with a support group for people recovering from relationship betrayals that I had joined on a therapist's recommendation. I had stayed in touch with my Bali friends too. We had a monthly video chat where we updated each other on our lives and reminisced about our time together on the island. Natalie was planning a visit to Seattle in the spring, and I had tentative plans to visit Kyoko in Tokyo the following year. As for Tyler and Megan, news occasionally reached me through the grapevine. Their hasty marriage had lasted 6 months before imploding spectacularly when Tyler discovered Megan was having an affair with a client from her agency. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all me. Tyler had reached out once after their separation, a late-night text that simply read, "You were right to just say congrats and walk away." I'm sorry I didn't appreciate what we had. I hadn't responded. Megan had made more persistent efforts to reconnect, sending emails and even a handwritten letter expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness. I had read them but felt no urgency to respond. Perhaps someday I would be ready for that conversation, but for now I was focused on my own journey. That afternoon, after the partnership announcement and a small celebration with colleagues, I stopped by a coffee shop near my old apartment. I hadn't planned to go there. It was a place Tyler and I had frequented, but something drew me to revisit this piece of my past. As I waited in line, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Tyler's sister Lindsay looking surprised but pleased to see me. "Hayley, it's been ages." She gave me an awkward but genuine hug. "How are you?" "I'm doing really well, actually," I replied and meant it. "Just made partner at my firm today." "That's fantastic." Her enthusiasm seemed sincere. "I've been following your work on Instagram. The campaign you did for that solar company was brilliant." We found a table and sat down for an impromptu catch-up. Lindsay told me she had maintained minimal contact with Tyler after what had happened. "Mom and Dad still see him, of course, but things aren't the same," she explained. "They were so ashamed of what he did. It affected all of us." "I never wanted that," I said honestly. "I never blamed your family." "I know. That's why we've always respected you so much." She hesitated before adding, "He's miserable, you know. After Megan left him, he tried dating again, but nothing sticks. I think he realizes what he threw away." I nodded, surprised to feel not satisfaction at his unhappiness, but a detached compassion. "I hope he figures things out," I said. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow from their mistakes." "That's incredibly generous of you," Lindsay said, looking at me with newfound respect. "Most people in your position would hope he stays miserable forever," I smiled. "A year ago, I might have, but I've learned that holding on to anger only weighs you down." After we parted with promises to stay in touch, I walked through the park where Tyler had once proposed a picnic on our second date. The memories were there, but they no longer carried the sting they once had. They were simply part of my story, not the defining chapter I had once thought them to be, but a necessary passage that had led me to where I was now. That evening, I attended a meeting of my support group. What had begun as a necessary lifeline in my darkest days had evolved into a community where I now often found myself in the position of mentor rather than the one needing guidance. Newer members looked to those of us who had come through the other side of betrayal for hope that healing was possible. "I thought my life was over when I found those texts on his phone," a recently joined woman named Tara said tearfully. "We were together for 7 years. How do you start over after that?" I shared my story, not for the first time, but with new insights that continued to evolve as I gained distance and perspective. "The hardest lesson for me," I told the group, "was learning that sometimes the greatest betrayals can be disguised blessings. I would never have chosen this path. The pain was excruciating, but the woman I've become through this journey is stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than the woman who was planning that wedding." Afterward, the group facilitator, a therapist named Rachel, pulled me aside. "You know, your story has helped so many people here," she said. "Have you ever thought about sharing it more widely, maybe writing about your experience?" The idea resonated with something I'd been considering. My journal from Bali had evolved into a regular writing practice, and I'd found the process therapeutic and clarifying. The thought of transforming that private healing into something that might help others was appealing. "I'll think about it," I promised. That night, I sat on the balcony of my condo, looking out at the city lights. In my hand was the diamond necklace Megan had given me before the wedding, the expensive gift that had felt like compensation for a betrayal not yet revealed. I had kept it not out of sentiment, but because selling it had seemed somehow tainted. Now I had finally decided what to do with it. The following day, I would donate it to a non-profit that provided professional clothing and accessories to women leaving abusive relationships and rebuilding their lives. The necklace that represented betrayal would be transformed into a tool for someone else's fresh start. As I looked out at the Seattle skyline, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain had not disappeared completely. There were still moments when grief or anger would surface unexpectedly, but those moments no longer defined me or controlled me. I had learned that healing isn't about forgetting or pretending the wound never existed. It's about integrating the experience into your life story in a way that allows you to move forward with greater wisdom and compassion for others and perhaps most importantly for yourself. The betrayal that I had once thought would destroy me had instead become the catalyst for a profound transformation. I was not the same person who had received that devastating selfie a year ago, and for that, paradoxically, I had Tyler and Megan to thank. I no longer identified as someone who had survived betrayal. I was someone who had thrived because of it, and that realization was perhaps the most unexpected gift of all. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content about overcoming life's challenges and finding strength in unexpected places. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings clear the way for the most beautiful beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage and grace on yours.